sort of instrumental books was this book I happened on by accident. My mom had bought a copy of it and it was just on her nightstand called To Dance with Angels. And one morning, again, not unlike that weird premonition of knowing that I was going to see that figure by my bedside, something woke me up early in the morning and I just suddenly I felt totally drawn to this book and that I had to read it. So I picked it up and it was like a 400-page book and I read it in a weekend. And what it was really about was this couple, a married couple who were private detectives, and they had heard about this man who channeled a character, somebody who had lived before named Doctor Peoples, and they were intrigued by it, and as private detectives, they wanted to investigate it, and they ended up writing a book about their experiences speaking with this channel and the spirit that he channeled through, and they wrote this book called To Dance with Angels.
Wow.
And and I mean, it was fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I was probably 14 at the time, and, this character's talking about the other side and reincarnation and, you know, it just opened my eyes in a really wild way, and I loved it. I thought, "This this makes sense. This is amazing." So I always look to that book as, like, that was really the instrument that I remember that was what brought me to the idea of reincarnation and really opened my mind to that and then to other things, and then, it's so readily available, and I was, in Southern California, Los Angeles, it's such a hub for that, and I was into Deepak Chopra and The Secret and, um, it was just so available, tarot
Yeah.
cards and, I was just in
Huh.
that world.
That's interesting. So you went through a lot of trauma, it seems like, during that transition with your parents and the fallout and things that
Mhm.
happened very negatively too. And as you mentioned, it seems like something that was plaguing you as a child was also plaguing the rest of your family. Not only your sisters, but it seems like it also plagued your parents as well. Just for all those misgivings so quickly, and that led to that portion where you're still finding some kind of solace, if you will, some ability to have some peace, and that led you to opening that book about channeling. That is interesting. So out of all these stages, you're kind of seeing how the enemy's working to kind of get you twisted to talk about going and pursuing kind of a darker path. And that's more of the new age occultic practices and channeling.
And
So
and I just sorry to interject,
no.
the hardest part, I think, to get people to understand that grew up with some kind of religion or basis for that is that I never, never, never at this point looked at it as dark
Oh
or
yeah.
a problem or that I mean, it never honestly, it never
Yeah.
even crossed my mind. I thought, "Oh, this is wonderful. This is
Yeah.
amazing," you know?
Yeah. That's exactly right. I mean, Satan masquerades as an angel of light, and we're thinking that these are just things that we can do, but we don't realize that it's not our power. It's either a power of God or it's not the power of God. So that's very interesting, Candace. So now you're kind of opening the door into that side of the realm, if you will. And what kind of happened in your life? Did you see things improving because you're actually going and spending your time within that kind of channeling, learning about it, going into the new age type of side of it at that point, or not
I
so
don't
much?
know, it wasn't like I was trying to use it at this point to improve anything. I'm a very mental person and, have a high capacity for information, and so it just feeds me, it's
Interesting.
but I wasn't
Yeah.
like, "I need to do X, Y, and Z to achieve." I mean, I really had so many things going on. I was a dancer, I was moving into high school at that time. I rode horses for a little bit, but then I had to kinda choose dance or horses, none of my friends rode horses, there was, drugs, and there was just a lot of things going on. Of course, my other family members, my oldest sister was, causing all kinds of havoc, and my mom was a mess. I mean, there was just so many things. So I wasn't it was just part of my life that was intriguing to me, but I wasn't trying to use it, at this point anyway, to gain anything.
Interesting. Okay, that makes sense. So then, Candace, kind of walk me through your time as rest of your young adult into kind of that next stage of life. Then,
Well, okay, so then Actually, the next thing that happened is I really wanted I was a performer, I was already a dancer, as I said, and I wanted to, be a performer for my career, and I knew dance was a short-lived career, and I don't know if I really had what it took to be a professional dancer anyway, and so I wanted to be an actor. Um, I loved movies, something I grew up on, and I also because of, I think, my life experiences, I had a lot of, emotion and feelings that I was looking for a form of expression and way to channel them, and acting seemed like a natural direction. So, at 15 years of age, I talked my mom into driving me up once a week to this class that took place on Sundays in Hollywood, in the heart of Hollywood, and I learned about this class from one of my good friend's older sisters who started attending, it was called the Beverly Hills Playhouse in LA, and you had to be an adult, so you had to be 18 or older, but it had a really great reputation. They had a lot of famous people who attended there. The man who ran the whole thing, his name was Milton Katselas, and he had a few teachers under him, that taught, and one of his teachers was a woman named Gloria Gifford, and she also taught a teen class on Sundays, so if you weren't of age, you could go to her teen class. So at 15, I started attending this class. Now, again, little did I realize until later that their whole acting, teaching, and everything was based on Scientology. 'Cause I didn't know anything about Scientology, but Mel Kitselis was a huge Scientologist. So his acting techniques and his approach and his own book that he wrote, everything was kind of based on Scientology. So now I was being indoctrinated with Scientology principles, not even really understanding what that was. And anyway, to shorten the story a little bit, I was in this acting class from the age of 15 to the age of 25 with a 2-year break when instead of going to college, I went to New York actually to study at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. But then I graduated and I went right back to that acting class. So I spent nearly 10 years of my young adulthood in this class.
Wow. And when you mentioned Scientology, what were some of those teachings like? I'm just not too familiar with it, and I'm curious. What were some things that stuck out to you now that maybe you didn't question so much back then, but now you look back at it and you say, "Wow, that was interesting what they taught me about this."
Well, So so first of all, Scientology means knowing how to know, or like the science of knowing. And many people might be familiar that it was started by a man named L. Ron Hubbard, who was a science fiction writer, among other things, and also had a pretty dark occult background. Um, and the legend is, anyway, that he, along with a couple other people, said, "Oh, the best way to make money is to start a religion." And so he started Scientology. But the interesting thing is I still sometimes today I'm like, they taught that in Scientology, and it's not exactly that it's not true. The biggest thing about Scientology is that it's godless, it's soulless. Um, but to answer your question, I don't know. I don't know if I could just think offhand. But what intrigued me, or what drew me to it, is, well, one, our acting teacher, which, this is funny. She was a student of that Milton Katselas for many years because she was an actress herself. She had this teen class, but she always said she was not a practicing Scientologist. Then she and Milton and the Playhouse had a big falling out. She left the playhouse altogether, and now her teen class had grown into basically a normal class because a lot of the students came from there. Now you could be an adult and be in that class. And at this point, she started going to what they call the Celebrity Center, which is the big center in Hollywood where all the celebrities go. It's a Scientology center. She started going there. And the nature of her and her class is, I mean, we were more than her students. It was kind of weird. It was like, I mean, it was very culty, again, looking back. It was like we were her children, and so anything she was doing, she was always trying to get everybody else involved. So she starts going to the Celebrity Center, and it's like a recruitment. So she's inviting all of her students to go, and I was intrigued because the very first sort of base course that you do is, they call it the purification rundown, and they give you a bunch of, vitamins, including niacin that, causes a flush. It's a B vitamin, it causes a flush, and you go and you, like, run on a treadmill, or you run around for, like, 30 minutes to get your blood flowing, and then you proceed to go in a sauna and sweat as much as you can for, like, 4.5, 5 hours a day, And you do this until you feel that you've reached completion, but the idea was that our fat cells store toxins, whether from, street drugs or over-the-counter drugs or whatever, and this, according to L. Ron Hubbard, and apparently there is some scientific accuracy to this, that this is a way to get those toxins released from the fat cells and out of your body. And L. Ron Hubbard's theory was that this actually will improve your clarity and your IQ, and now you can go up the bridge of his courses to reach this sort of, enlightenment level. Yeah, it's I mean, it's very in-depth and complex.
Yeah, it's like a
So
purification ritual.
yeah, which
That's what it
again,
seems
a
like.
lot of apparently athletes and stuff did it. It
Yeah,
it's it wasn't a bad thing to do, but it was just everything about Scientology and the center and even the people that work there was really weird. I mean, I even thought that when I was there. It was like I used to say it was like the village of the damned, like, the people that work there, they're all in their uniform because L. Ron Hubbard was also he was in the Navy, and so he ran it like a Navy, and they would do stuff on boats, and I mean, it was weird, and these people would sign, like, billion-year contracts, and they would get all they'd treat them like slaves. They lived across the street in the, building from Scientology Center. They'd have to come first thing in the morning, like 8 o'clock, clean, cook, do whatever, all under the guise that, well, they're getting all their training for free, but if they were gonna leave, they would have to pay for it. So they were
wow,
basically having
very
that held
sucky.
over them.
Mm.
Yeah. I'm sorry, really didn't answer your question. I really can't think offhand
No,
because there was a lot of valuable information that I learned,
sure.
but like I said, there's no God in it.
Yeah,
It truly is to manipulate your reality, and
yeah,
it's just like witchcraft, it's no different.
exactly. Well, no, you certainly answered my question. I mean, it's devoiding the human element, right? It's just science first, everything else last, and especially the spirit. So that's quite interesting, Candace. So you're basically you take a 2-year hiatus, you go to New York, you complete some additional studies, and then you go back to that academy to continue your learnings within that art class. So how did that then pan out at the age of 25? You said, right?
Yeah. So, I was a very gung ho person, very committed and dedicated, and had a lot of energy. And I worked really hard to try to, make it as an actor, but I was doing it all through the sort of lens of this teacher because, I didn't come from an acting family. My parents didn't know anything and I didn't know anything. And I completely trusted this woman um, for her guidance and her teaching. She was basically our guru among other things. But she unfortunately, I mean, she was a very manipulative, messed up woman in her own right, and just an aside, just like a year ago, I kind of on a whim looked her up, and what came up was a Hollywood Reporter article, which Hollywood Reporter is a big news, is big magazine in Hollywood. In like 2022 or something, there was a huge expose done on her, um, for all these students coming out of all the shenanigans and things she did. So, I mean, I was in her class like 20 years ago, but I saw this and it was really sort of like it just confirmed because I just kind of blew it off like, that was a stupid thing that I did. But no, this woman was really she's a predator. And I was really in a bad situation and just it was too naive to really understand. So, I'm sorry, that was a long aside.
No
Okay,
worries.
what was the question? How did I get okay, so I've been in her class basically 10 years and, she just ran me into the ground, frankly. I feel like she read me from a mile away. She saw most of the kids, when it was still a teen class that were in that class, came from broken families. So that was the first thing is that they didn't have a strong foundation at home, and so it was easy for her to get her claws on these kids, and um, mentally and emotionally abuse us and control us. So she really had me. I did not wanna fail, and I'm such a people pleaser, and so it was like, she'd lift you up and then beat you down, lift you up and beat you down, and so I didn't want to ever leave that class as a failure. I didn't want her to be right about anything she could say about me that I didn't do everything and, that I wasn't living up to my potential or whatever. I really wanted to succeed, that was my main motivation. But it was when you're in an abusive situation like that, I mean, it just wore me out because I was never going to succeed in her eyes. It was always to control me, to bring me here and then to throw me back down kind of thing. And I had become so sort of depressed and despondent inside. I didn't want to be an actor anymore because I was just like, this is horrible. This is not what I signed up for. And I mean, I knew that there were things wrong with her, and I would complain about her even to my parents, and they'd say, "Well, leave the class." And then I'd be like, "You don't understand. I can't leave." They didn't understand. I mean, it was really kind of psychotic. But I felt like I was dying inside. I mean, I was 25 years old. I wasn't sick. There was nothing wrong, but it was like there was a fire in me that was just I felt like it was going to go out, and I just couldn't see like where is my life going? And then one day I heard a voice, and it wasn't audible, but it was a voice in my head that wasn't my voice, and it just simply said, "You'll never find God on this path." And I was like, "What?" Like, I hadn't thought about God or, all the things that thought I was connected to before, and it was like, "Oh my gosh, I that's true." Like, I've lost sight of God, like, I know that might sound funny now because I didn't even know God. I was in but, to me, there was something in my spirit that knew that there was a God and that there was a bigger reason that we're all here. And I had become totally disconnected from that. And I think that's what that sense of like I was gonna die because I had totally disconnected. And this voice, which I think I even pictured it then, like I just felt like it was an angel. An angel just said, "You're never gonna find God on this path," and whatever, it was so impactful to me because I just knew it wasn't my voice that it woke me up, and I realized I started really reflecting, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have to get out of this class. I don't know
Wow.
what I'm gonna do. I don't know if I wanna be an actor anymore, but I have to get out of this class."
So
Um,
so
and
Candace, this is like the first time you've had some kind of divine encounter where actually it didn't seem negative, it was actually like a positive in your life. For
yeah,
one of the first times you're actually feeling like this is something greater than me that wants a benefit for me rather than something give me fear or terror
yeah,
then.
yeah,
That's interesting.
yeah. So I started to well, basically just had to make the decision first in my mind, and then, it wasn't easy to leave the class because there was a whole procedure and she had designed it that way, just like in Scientology, they don't make it easy for you to leave because they don't want people to defect. But the short of it was, you try to say, first of all, you have to announce when you're not going to come to class. You can't just not show up. And then you get kind of interrogated, like, well, why aren't you coming to class? So basically, I tried to do that. Like, I'm not coming to class. And then when I started being interrogated, I just had to be honest. I said, you know what? I'm leaving class. Oh, okay. Well, that's okay. But, the integrity, because that's a big thing in Scientology, you got to be in integrity and ethics. If you want to be in integrity, you got to come in class and you got to talk to Gloria. Okay, okay. So they talked me into coming into class on a like in the middle of a class on a Sunday. And I walked into this theater and she always started the class with everybody on the stage and she would spend sometimes 2 hours or more just talking to us and lecturing us, whatever. We weren't even acting yet. We were just getting lectured. And they were all on the stage and she was talking about me. She was telling them, basically why I was leaving and all the horrible things I had done and that I was leaving because I was out ethics. She was just smearing me to everybody and they were lies. And I walked in and she wouldn't let me sit down. She wouldn't let me be on the stage. And so I was like here and everybody's on the stage and it was like a firing squad. So and so, stand up. Tell Candace why she's wrong for leaving. So and so. And I mean, it was crazy. And I knew to an extent that it wouldn't be easy, but I didn't expect that. Um, and then we went on break and and I remember, I mean, I looked at this woman like a mother, like she would shower us with gifts on our birthday and we would spend Christmas with her. Like I mean, it was crazy. So I remember I went and I sat down and I just needed something from her, some warmth or like I mean, I was desperate. I just felt so confused. I was lost. And I'll never forget I sat down, I looked at her and it was like her eyes were black. It was like and I just felt like she was looking through me and I mean, it was dead. It was like this woman does not care about me. This woman does not see me. This it just hit me. And because again, I was 15-year-old you know, 15-year-old already traumatized from my family life, breaking apart, so desperate to please this woman and really kind of seeking a parental, love and connection. And it took me that many years to just see this woman did not care about me, and it was heartbreaking, but so that's really why I left. And the positive thing was I was the first person of, like, that core group, because when I started that teen class, there was, like, 12 kids in there. Um, and we had all grown up into adults, and we're still in that class, and, I was the first person in that core group to leave, and it kind of broke what I felt was like a spell of sorts, and a lot of people left that class, and she stopped for a while. Then I heard she went to Italy, and she got all these, like, new students, and obviously she picked back up again, um, but it was a big deal because I felt like, in a sense, how I imagine it might be if somebody was in jail for 10 years and then they come out into the real world and they're kind of like, "Oh, what do I do? Like, where do I belong?" Because my life had all my friends, all of our activities practically, like everything kind of centered around that class.